Greetings. Today we're going to get into the fabrication of the electrical system for the van. This is the box that's going to house the home power system for the van. Okay, let's start by unboxing our biggest component in this system, which is our multi-plus inverter. And it's something we're going to want to we've designed it in CAD, but we want to get it in the box in the physical realm to just kind of compare what that looks like. All right, so here we are in Shaper 3D, and this is the CAD program of choice we are using in this build. And man, do I have to say that CAD software has come a long way since the early days of Google SketchUp, back when I first started using this stuff many years ago. And what's great with these Victron components is you can just go to their website and download the CAD files you need and import them into the program. Same with extruded aluminum pieces and brackets from the Victron website. And then for the boards, we just draw those in the program and put them to the color we need. So that's the CAD piece in a nutshell. After that's done, we buy the materials, put them together. Now let's get these boards cut to spec. And to do that, I'm going to use this track saw for the first time. And this is probably the cheapest track saw on Amazon. Hopefully you don't notice too much of a pattern here with starting with the cheapest tool first, but that is what I'm doing in some of these cases. And to be honest, if you can afford a better track saw product or have a better tool for the job, please educate the community by putting that in the comments below. Anyway, once we get the track saw going, we use the laser level to cut our boards to size. And as I'm watching this, I realize I made another mistake, which was not replacing the blade on the skill saw with a fine tooth blade. So you want a lot of teeth on your blade when you're cutting plywood, so you don't have as many burrs on the edges of your cuts that you need to sand away later. You just get a cleaner cut. So I bought one of those after I did these cuts, and that's what I did. Okay, so routing is another thing that has to happen for this design, because these pieces are going to sit right in the 1-inch gap of the plywood, and so for the extruded aluminum. And so for the back panel, what I would call the motherboard, the board that's going to be the mother and hold all the electronic components, except for the batteries, that is 3/4 inch Baltic Birch plywood. And we use Baltic Birch because it has so many layers that are glued together very well. So it really is the best product for the job. Now I went ahead and started by just trying this waterproof sealant that I spent like $100 from on Amazon, and attaching the birch to the extruded aluminum with an extruded aluminum fastener that I cut in half, so I could have one on either side. Now once this sealant dried, I didn't really like the color. There wasn't enough gloss. It didn't make this beautiful wood look any better. And because this wood's not going to be seen, well, it's really good wood to just build your painting skill set or your gloss and varnishing skill set. And that's what I set out to do with this. So after I test fit some of these components, I went back to finishing these boards with different types of clear coat, testing both an amber and a gloss, and you'll see that in a little bit. First things first, let's get our batteries unboxed, see how they look on this frame, and they're the next biggest thing and heaviest thing besides the inverter, which I'm just going to hang up with a cam strap here. In the future though, as I got to laying all this stuff out, I took the batteries off, laid the box down flat, and then mounted all the products. So now we're getting out our bus bars, and these are called links distributors and the battery management system, which you're going to want from Victron if you're using their batteries. There'll be a lot more talk about this in future videos, but in this initial part, we're just putting things together in their simplest form and getting a visual idea of how they look in the physical realm compared to how they look in the CAD realm before we commit to the final installation process. So here's our bus bars exposed. There's two Phillips head screws on each one. Battery management system goes in the middle, and it's got this electronic shunt which opens and closes based on changes in temperature or voltage from your battery system. So in a lot of systems, you'll see kind of the old school red knob that you turn to physically separate the conductor, which is like the piece of metal that lets the electricity move through the system. This does that electronically. You can add a physical switch to it if you want, but looking at how the software is written, the software is going to do a better job than a human, and it's just going to open and close that shunt effectively. So I'm going to trust the technology and go with that. Okay, so once we got that down, we have one more side of this frame we want to get fabricated out in this initial stage. So we don't need to do the top yet. That will be the bed top, or the front. We're not 100% sure what that's going to look like yet, so we'll hold off on that for now, or even the side. So this is the back panel, and this is going to hold a 120 volt outlet with USB-C and USB-A charging options, and it's going to hold a DC switch panel, another DC switch panel, and the AC switch panel. So all those breakers can be adjusted as needed from just opening the main outside door of the van. So that panel is going to go here. Of course, it doesn't fit because our fasteners didn't account for that in our CAD program. So we're going to use the router to route these corners out so it does fit. And with the power of editing, this is going to go pretty fast. Once that's done, we can go ahead and do some cardboard aided design, because we didn't do this in CAD, and translate the cut patterns for our DC panel and our AC DC panel, which are both combined. Before we get to that though, let's route out some channels for the strap, the cam strap. It's going to be a 2-inch cam strap that's going to hold these batteries. And we've routed it, and now we're going to install bars under each one of these cam strap holes made of extruded aluminum. So it's just going to make it a lot stronger to strap this in when it's not just going through the Baltic Birch. That on the base here is just 1/2 inch, but in fact it's going through a bar on each side of 1-inch extruded aluminum. So that's the design there. You'll see in a moment here when we look at the bottom again that there's a support member of extruded aluminum under each battery. So this is a pretty solid setup, and what I'm going for in my design is, aluminum's expensive, but it's light, and it's better to use aluminum for support than birch, because birch is so heavy, and the core reason we use aluminum is it's light in a van application, and we really don't have a lot of extra weight to play around with in the 170-inch wheelbase Sprinter model with just the single wheels instead of the dually wheels. Okay, so now we're working on this back panel, drilling our holes in. And one thing I learned after consulting with a anarchist woodworker, I'd say anarchist in philosophy of woodworking, was that I could use a straight edge tied to a clamp or attached to a clamp to get a better straight edge of these cuts. The other thing that happened with this first cut for the DC panel was somehow the translation got messed up. We put the translation on and then traced the outside of it, and it ended up being too big. So when I did the next one, I cut it a little small, test fitted it, and then just slowly cut it out again and again until it fits. So the measure twice, cut once, or cut multiple times and go from small to big is what you want to do. So we can see there's like a little gap there, and it just doesn't fit as well as we'd like it to. Okay, moving on to the bottom, which is for the next, the AC/DC panel. It's a pretty cool band, and it doesn't fit perfectly the first time, so we work on that a little bit. And this is what you want. You want to get a snug fit on these panels the first time if you can. So that's what we're trimming through here. Alrighty, now that that is out of the way, we can move on to the fabrication of another support member of the battery system. So these batteries are going to be protected from forward and back movement and upside down movement by this cam strap. Hopefully they'll never be upside down, but if they are, they'll be held in place. But lateral movement from port to starboard, not so much. That's what this scrap piece of type 15 extruded aluminum's for. It's going to hold these batteries flush against the back of the board so that they can't move side to side. When the vehicle moves side to side, they will stay in place. All right, time to test these two different finishes for the Baltic Birch. We have clear gloss varnish and amber gloss varnish. Like many of our materials, this one is another thing that's expensive. So the aluminum's expensive, the Victron components are expensive, the Baltic Birch is expensive, and the glosses are expensive. So reading the directions here, you know, there's times where you want to fabricate and be an artist, and there's times where you want to read the directions and choose to follow them. And this is one of those times. So big things about this water-based sealant in terms of reading the directions is, or clear coat, is you got to put on a lot of coats, and the coats need to be dry in between the times you put them on. So what I did was put on a single coat, let it dry overnight, and then the next day after work put on another coat. And I did that for 4 days. All right, after 6 coats of paint, intermittent sanding and cleaning, we're going to look back in time at when we put in the outlet hole for the board that also has our switches on it. I attempted to use the straight edge, but it didn't really work for me on this jigsaw, so I guess I still have some learning to do. Once it was fit, I moved on to filling. I'm trying this Gorilla Glue wood filler for the first time ever. Truth be told, this is the first time I've ever used wood filler. And I'm just kneading it like clay, taking a creative approach. Probably should have read the directions. And filling in the gaps in the wood that I need filled to get a nice snug fit for the DC switches. Once I was done applying the filler, I let this dry overnight and moved on to the next part in the project, riv nuts. If you've never done a riv nut before, practice on a piece of sheet metal that you've cut out of your van. You can see how it went in there. Kind of like that. All right, now let's do some ones for real. So the strategy I'm using here is to drill through the extruded aluminum, mark the back of the sheet metal of the van, and then pull the frame out and drill through the van. Clean up the holes, then put the riv nuts in the holes. We're using 3 M5 riv nuts for this application. I think it's going to be super strong enough. Now we are ready to put this thing together in closer to its final phase. And in theory, these boards are going to stay on permanently now that they have been painted and finished. So that is what we're doing now. Clamping as we go along. Putting some supports in because we know those batteries are going to be on this bottom board. And then I'm just using some wedges to get everything leveled the way I want it. The squares these fit in, the aluminum framing is perfectly square, and my boards are pretty close to that but not perfect. Got a 2-inch corner bracket with a gusset on it, and I want this there too, just so we are extra strong and secure. Just using wood screws. And then to give this 3/4 inch backboard even more support, we're drilling all the way through the extruded aluminum with a small bit, then making it a little bit bigger for the screw head, and then using a longer wood screw to securely attach the extruded aluminum to the motherboard. And we do this on all sides, top, bottom, left, right. If you have a helper, make sure they're wearing full PPE as well. At this point, we are ready to put our products onto the motherboard and build out this electrical system. We'll start that in the next video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you around.